This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group and your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is Kenneth Harber.
Thank you.
Mr. Attorney General, Attorney Harber.
No, not Attorney General, sir.
Attorney.
Assistant U.S. Attorney I was at one
Okay,
time.
well, as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty good. You're still attorney.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, as I mentioned, I was Assistant U.S. Attorney in the United States Attorney's Office in Detroit.
Over here in Washington, D.C.?
Actually, in Detroit,
in Michigan.
Yeah, in Michigan, Eastern District of Michigan, from 71 to 79.
Okay.
I came here in 79 and joined the Inspector General's office of HHS as those first
That's
foreman.
the Health and Human...
Yes, the Inspector General who monitors all the healthcare crime and puts people in jail who...
Well, not necessarily they put on jail. They at least they go through their due diligence process before they put people in jail.
Well,
right?
people have due process, yeah, but
Okay.
you know, the fact of the matter is that they have an enormous amount of power to investigate, and if people are not doing things that are criminal, they can certainly cut off their participation in the Medicare program so that they can't abuse the process anymore. And I was there for 4 years, a little bit more than 4 years as those first forming. And I then went into private practice, and I've been a healthcare attorney in private practice since.
Healthcare attorney.
Yes.
So, how did you become an assistant United States attorney? Which, as far as I'm concerned, is a mouthful, but it's a pretty good deal.
It is. It is. Now,
I was never fortunate enough to have an assistant United States attorney.
well, let me just start off by saying what I did before has been declassified, so I can talk.
Okay.
You know, I always resent people that come right out of an agency and, you know, say that they had such a sensitive activity and that
Sure.
they're talking and giving away secrets and everything and could cause people to get into difficulties if the wrong people are watching. But I was declassified. It was 50 years that I was classified. And in 2010, I asked for declassification. In 2011, I was declassified. And as it turns out, I was an asset for the FBI when I was going to school in the 60s. And as such, my function was to seek out all the information I could and assist the Bureau in trying to prevent those who in the 60s were trying to destroy our government and our infrastructure. There were bombers in those days, as you may recall. There were gun people as well. Wasn't
Bad people.
Bad people. It wasn't as much in the public's memory now as to what went on in those days, but it certainly was in our memory in those days.
Okay. So, how did you become assistant United States attorney?
Well,
Was it appointed by the?
It's an appointment by the Attorney General.
Attorney General of the United States.
Of the United States, and I had because I did such a good
Wonderful job.
Wonderful job. They really did feel that we had a very close relationship.
Yeah.
The people I worked with the Bureau, they were considered my handlers, and I was considered an asset. And they actually offered me a position as a special agent of the FBI by the time I was done. And this is truly an honor because of the fact that normally assets are never offered such a position, as you can imagine. But I had gone to law school for 3 years, and I had been in undergraduate school, so I wanted to practice law, and I asked them, after, profusely thanking them and knowing that the offer had been approved by Mr. Hoover himself.
It goes back that long?
Yeah.
FBI, Edgar J. Hoover?
J. Edgar Hoover,
Wow.
yes, he was still alive at the time. And I had, asked if they would help me to become an assistant U.S. attorney, and they did.
You enjoyed your job?
Oh,
You know,
the U.S. attorney said one time to me, said, if this was a life appointment, I wouldn't want any other job. He became a justice for the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. That's Justice Guy of the Sixth Circuit.
is that right?
Yes, but he would prefer to be the U.S. attorney instead of a justice or anything else. And being an assistant U.S. attorney, especially in the office that we had, was just such a fulfilling job because of the fact we had only 16 people in the whole office, attorneys, and we had as many cases as Los Angeles. And that means that there was a lot of independence that we were provided. They had to have good people in the office. They had to give good supervision in terms of the general parameters and to know what the bosses were expecting and to know when to come and ask for direction and to go and do your job in the meantime.
That's
and,
good.
You know, that's what we did. All of us did.
So you talked a little bit about the Office Inspector General, which plays a very important role in our country. So how did you become a senior attorney for the Office Inspector General? And tell us a little bit about to the audience what the Office Inspector General does.
The Office of Inspector General is there and it's responsible to help Congress program plan the programs that are being implemented in healthcare and the other areas of HHS. It's not just Medicare, it's across the board. And they will do analyses, they will do audits, they will do investigations. It's not just criminal investigations that they do. They try to see how the programs are operating and how they can be improved, and that's one of their big functions. You know, they're dedicated to
their mission.
To their mission, and that's a very good word for it. They consider it a mission, and
it is a mission.
It is, and they're dedicated to bring about good health care and good other programs that serve the American people, and they're very dedicated, and I'm just honored that I was there in the very beginning. I had been permitted to write a letter to Congress even seeking the creation of the Inspector General's office.
So every agency has Office Inspector General?
Now they do. Ours was the first.
Ours
was the first statutorily created Inspector General's office.
Now they have in every agency.
They have them in all the agencies.
And they're independent.
And they're independent.
And they report to who?
To Congress and to whoever the head of the agency is. And we're not saying the head of Medicare, the head of this. They're talking about the head, the secretary of HHS, and to Congress. And they have authority.
Independence
yes,
and
they
authority
have,
and the responsibility.
They have authority and responsibility to report to Congress directly. And other agencies, oversight agencies, don't have that capacity, but the Inspector General has that responsibility.
So give us an example of a case, if you can describe it, that Office Inspector General took it over and also prosecuted it, and the people are in the jail right now.
There are numerous.
Numerous
I don't know if they're still in jail, but I can think of cases I had. They eventually went to jail, but they
paid the price.
They paid the price. There was I remember one case where they were doing hair analysis, and they were billing it as blood analysis.
Oh, can you believe that?
And they were charging us if it was blood analysis, and hair analysis was not approved at that time, and we shut them down, we put the evidence together and got them prosecuted.
Okay. Well, did you also do the same thing with the pharmaceutical industry also?
The pharmaceutical industry is a very, very unique animal. It is so large. They're working on it now, and they have created areas that the pharmaceutical industry cannot go into, and there's been prosecutions. When I was there, we didn't, you know, we had just 100 investigators at the time, and you know, that was a big elephant to go hunting. You know, now they're doing it, and the pharmaceutical industries were taking doctors to various places where they would give them, you know, boat trips and everything else, and then they'll pay people, doctors, who would be putting on the programs, and this was, you know, within the last
pure conflict of interest.
Yes, in the last 5-10 years.
What about the
stopped.
prosecuting the people who's in Medicaid defrauding things, and there's a lot of cases going on in this country about the defrauding Medicaids and so on and so forth, right?
That's correct.
So, and at that time, obviously, with the same thing. When
it was the type of situation that's been going on for the beginning.
Forever.
Yes. And you just try to stop it. You try to damper it down so that it doesn't take from the programs what's needed for the people. But they were, when I first started up, they they were creating home health agencies, not-for-profits, and the people who were creating them would turn around and sell them. And in those days, the people who were regulating them were permitting them to buy Mercedes-Benz and put them on the cost report, and they were paid by cost reports. And the argument was that the Mercedes-Benz would appreciate, and therefore it wasn't a cost to the government, that it was, it was a savings to the government. They were making money on it. But it gives the wrong message to everybody when they are able to do that, and that, of course, was stopped.
So how does the Office of Inspector General, you mentioned the Office of Inspector General interface with the Congress, and also they report directly to the Secretary of that agency. So how do they interface with the Office of Attorney General's office?
Well, they will work directly with the local U.S. attorneys and the FBI. They have task force. And when I first started up, we had a division of special assignments. That's what I was in, and it was I was a senior attorney. There were several of the division of special assignments, and we were expected to go and do investigations, and then get an authorization from justice to actually prosecute the cases ourselves. We were all former ex-prosecutors. And that never came to pass because at that time, justice didn't want to give up the authority of prosecution. 20, 30 years later, Congress said to justice, yes, we're funding people to do exactly that. So we were ahead of our time. And
so how do you protect the whistleblower? There are a lot of people, whistleblowers.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you protect them to make sure they're not you don't prosecute them because they did what they're supposed to do as a private citizen?
Yes. Well, there's a judgment call.
Okay.
By the assistant U.S. attorney. Is this person a whistleblower where he actually was trying to avoid these bad things, or was he just trying to turn state's evidence and make it a big?
If he's a real guy, if he's
a central figure, if he's a central figure in a major crime type of situation, then he's not going to be able to be a whistleblower. But if he's a peripheral individual who was just caught up in something, he could possibly become a whistleblower, and the assistant U.S. attorney on the case could very possibly not prosecute him.
So let me just change the subject a little bit and talk a little bit about now you're a private attorney for healthcare.
Yes.
Who's your client, sir? What do you do? Before you do that, what do you think of all these FBI leaks? There's a lot of leaks going on FBI right now. What do you think of that?
Well,
that's a side question for you.
Well, yeah, I understand, but I would hope that there wouldn't be leaks with the FBI because of the fact that I really cherish the FBI just like I cherish the
integrity of the Department of Justice that's very important. If the public has a doubt, obviously they're not functioning, they're not doing their job properly.
If the law enforcement officers of our country have to be cleaner than Caesar's wife because of the fact that we have to always portray ourselves, and you can see how I identify I'm talking about. We always have to portray ourselves as being impartial and above politics, and doing what we're mandated to do.
And also to protect and
to serve.
Yeah, exactly. The integrity of the
Yes.
Department of Justice, being
Yes.
independent. So let's talk a little bit about your healthcare industry, what you do for them, what your clients are, what do you do?
Well, I have a variety of clients, from doctors to institutions. It varies at different times what type of clients I have. I might have an IPA as a client. I might have healthcare, and you'd have multiple clients obviously at any particular time. I might have a doctor. I might have a doctor who somebody's trying to injure in terms of competition. I might have a doctor who a hospital may be trying to use their peer review process adversely against because of the fact that he's competition to them. He may be a threat to some powerful interests within the hospital. Hospitals are very complex institutions, and while people tend to have a good, warm feeling towards hospitals, it's actually very much like a jungle, because you have people there that are searching out for the financial benefits, And sometimes they lose track of their ethics, and I'm not saying this happens often. All it has to do is happen to one time, and if you're the person it's happening to, then it's an atrocious type of situation for you.
Do you also represent the people who have been under prosecution for the office from the Office of Inspector General, because you have the experience?
I have done that. Criminal defense is not the main thing. I try to get involved where we prevent the prosecution.
Okay.
I had a case one time where an insurance company wanted to have a advanced nurse practitioner lose his license because they didn't like the way he was billing. And what he was doing is he was basically billing for alternative health care, but all documented by treatises that it was appropriate type of treatment. And we put together documentation to establish that he was compliant with standards, and they dropped their case. The licensing board, it was an advanced nurse practitioner who was able to practice with a doctor who would be supervising, which is an unusual type of thing. Most people are not aware how it works, but if a doctor comes in once a month and reviews the charts, et cetera, this person could have a practice. And so after the licensing board dropped their case, then they try to get him criminally prosecuted. The same evidence that we had for the licensing board, we sent to the FBI. The FBI looked at it, and they decided that there was nothing that was worth prosecuting. They wanted to interview the man. We agreed to have him interviewed. They concluded that there was no wrongdoing, and they made a recommendation to the assistant U.S. attorney to close the case and not to prosecute. They don't have the authority to close a case once at a certain point, but they certainly can make a recommendation whether or not to go ahead or not go ahead, and this is something that the Department of Justice seriously considers, obviously.
What forums do you practice?
Well, because of the federal nature of health care, you know, I practice around the country, literally, and depending upon the nature of the case, I may or may not have to have a local attorney. I sued the Veterans Administration for a doctor in Florida. I sued the Veterans Administration here in D.C. So, do I need a Virginia attorney? No, I've sued right here in D.C., and we've forced the Veterans Administration through mediation to reverse the termination of the doctor and to create the record that the doctor resigned and was not terminated. It was a matter of discrimination. She happened to be Indian, matter of fact.
That's okay. People come from all walks of life.
Well, what it is that Indians are prime targets because of the fact there's so many people coming into the system.
But some of them also departing the systems.
Well, some are, but so many are coming into the system. A lot of the white power structure is
resented
and hostile. It used to be women who were OBGYNs.
And not anymore.
Now they're the majority of OBGYNs, but at one point in time they were coming after them. I had an OBGYN who was a woman I had to defend. You know, so it's amazing how, you know, like I said, it's like a jungle out there, and you know, the meat is the money, and doctors get very vicious about protecting their turf. And when there's a shift in power, you know, often
they got to make a living, Ken.
Well, they don't have to eat people's bones
no,
to
they
do
do
it.
not have to eat
That's
people's
what they
bones.
do at times, and that's
but
why I'm there.
they can eat people's mind, though.
Well, they certainly drive them out of their mind at times.
So, if I have to ask you, can you tell the audience over here, the people who are healthcare practitioners, what advice do you have for them?
For healthcare practitioners?
Yeah.
Well, what you always want to do is make sure that you know what the law is, know what the requirements are, and make sure that you follow them, because of the fact if you don't, somebody may be looking like me, but 50 years younger maybe, will be there.
It's going to come after you.
Yeah, it's going to come after you. So make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's.
Okay. So tell me, as we finish this interview, as we in the last leg of this interview, what advice do you have for the people who wants to get into this kind of profession?
Healthcare or medicine?
Both.
I mean, as a doctor,
as
an
doctor,
attorney. As a doctor?
And as an attorney.
Well,
both.
As a doctor, what you need to do is take a good course in law. Know what the law is if you're going to be practicing. Not
Okay.
only do you need to know what the medicine is, you need to know what the law is. Have good advisors, because it's impossible for a doctor to know the law.
That's a good point.
Have good advisors, and make sure that they are sufficiently skilled in art. I mean, like, people seem like they are, and they might not be, and you're the people are going to come after. The Inspector General is going to come after you, so you got to make sure that who is advising you and how to operate is skilled. As far as attorneys, what you need to do when you get done with law school, go and become a nurse. No, really, because of the fact then you get a good healthcare background.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea. Well, thank you very much, Ken,
You're
for
very
coming
welcome.
here. I appreciated that very much. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week, and thank you for watching.